Fresh out of the box, the new little book is here. Got a lot of requests to review this one. Finally got my hands on one. Way back in 2012, Fred No, 7th generation Beam family master distiller, asked his son Freddie if he was sure he wanted to be in the family business. I mean, of course he did. When he did, Freddie did whatever he had to do to learn everything that went on day to day at Jim Beam at the distillery. Also during that time, Freddie discovered a real fascination for blending. He was drawn to the limitless tastes and flavors created by blending different aged spirits and pushing the boundaries of the whiskey category. So the great-great-grandson of Jim Beam created Little Book to showcase that passion. 8 blends later, we are here at the Path Not Taken, Freddie's very first all rye creation. Is it worth grabbing? Stay right here. It's the Mash and Drum. What's up, folks? I'm Jason C, and welcome back to the Mash and Drum. Like, subscribe, and help me do all the things to keep climbing to that 100,000 subscriber landmark here in 2024. Appreciate the support. So in blending Little Book Chapter 8, Master Distiller Freddie No created a new blend profile by blending ryes of different age, char, and mash bill. Now, it is Freddie No's first effort to blend an expression based on the influence and unique flavors of rye whiskey and the nuances of the rye grain, primarily in the American straight rye style selected, as well as its mash bill influence within a high rye bourbon. So Freddie No mentioned in the press release that knowing that rye has its roots extending to the beginning of American whiskey and holds more than 2 centuries of heritage, you could say it's been done. But with this chapter, Path Not Taken, we explore the future of American rye by blending a unique range of rye whiskeys together and to show you that rye still has plenty of stories left to tell. All right, let's get this poured, and then we can talk about this blend. So Little Book Chapter 8, The Path Not Taken, is a blend of several ryes and 1 bourbon, ranging from 4 years old all the way up to 18 years old. So if you look at the blend in detail, it starts off with an 18-year-old Kentucky Straight high rye bourbon whiskey, probably one of those same bourbons that we saw in the Hardin's Creek collection not that long ago. We have an 11-year Kentucky Straight rye whiskey, a 7-year Kentucky Straight rye malt whiskey. Then we have 3 interesting additions here. We have a 5-year Kentucky Straight rye whiskey, Kentucky Family Style Char 4, a 5-year Kentucky Straight rye whiskey, Pennsylvania Family Style Char 1, then a 5-year Kentucky Straight rye whiskey, Pennsylvania Family Style Char number 4. Then it's topped off with a 4-year Kentucky Straight rye whiskey. Now when you see Kentucky and Pennsylvania Family Style, I think really Kentucky style is what we're gonna see with the Knob Creek rye lineup. It's a Kentucky rye, a low rye mash bill. Then on the flip side, you have their Pennsylvania style, what they've done with the A Overholt this year, which is a higher rye content, which is more along the lines of a Pennsylvania style recipe. So, you know, Jim Beam can do both. For the rest of the details, this is bottled at 118.2 proof, and it retails for about 150 bucks. All right, I have not tasted this at all yet, so I'm excited. So here we go. This is a rye. This is a rye, big, bold, in your face, spicy, rye bread, minty. It's extremely herbal. I do think you get some of that dill note that you pick up sometimes in a rye whiskey. It does have an underlying sweetness. I do feel like I'm getting a nice little vanilla kick there too. Definitely some age. I feel like the barrel char is prevalent here. You could definitely smell a little bit of a smokiness to it. But as far as the nose goes, it's big, it's bold, it's rye heavy. So for the first Little Book rye, yeah, it's definitely in your face enough. So, all right, let's give it a try. Here we go. That one fools you a bit. So the front of the palate is all rye. It's dill, it's minty. I think you even get some of that, like that caraway seed that sometimes you find in a rye whiskey. It just gets very, very herbal forward. But then you kind of keep expecting that to keep going, and then all of a sudden it hits you with all this sweet. So let me see if I could figure that one out here. God, the finish on it, like from the mid back palate to the finish, it gets into like a toffee, little chocolatey there too. Maybe a hint of that, you know, that beamy nuttiness. I mean, like, is all this flavor in the back end coming from that 18-year-old high rye bourbon that's, you know, blended in here? Again, we don't really have proportions. We just know what's in the blend. But man, this thing takes you for a nice little ride. It's really interesting. The proof on it. So you're almost at 120 proof, 118.2. This drink's like maybe 107. It's got a nice little lingering spice, but I'm not getting like the heat that you would get normally in a, you know, something that's close to 120 proof, but it's got a nice finish. Then in the back of that palate, it's just, you kind of get that nice mix of, again, like the toffee, chocolate, picking up a little bit of like a chili pepper too, like a sweet chili. And then kind of finishing off with a little bit more of like a cinnamon nutmeg type deal. I'm not gonna say it's drying, but it gives you a little bit of that, like that feeling to it. That's crazy. But this is full flavored, great texture. There's a lot going on here. And I feel like depending on your palate, my palate's picking up certain things that I'm sensitive to. Your palate, if you're sensitive to dill, if you're sensitive to some of those rye notes, I think that's really gonna kind of drive your experience here while you're sipping this. But I do like the balance. It's very, you know, it's like going to see like a play, like in New York, like you're on Broadway. I remember going to plays when I was in New York on Broadway, but you kind of have a first half, then you have an intermission, and you have a second half. The first half gives you all the rye spice, the dill, again, a little bit of that caraway seed, mint, yeah, that rye breadiness that it has, and all of a sudden, you have a little bit of an intermission, a little bit of a break once it hits mid-palate, and then the second half comes in, and you want the big finish, the big finale, and then it hits you with a lot more of a sweeter profile. Again, the beam nuttiness, a little bit of that's there. You get chocolate, you get toffee, and then it ends with a little bit more baking spice type of note. If Freddie was going for something like this, with this flavor profile, kind of using the different char levels to accentuate different parts of the blend, as well as wanting to have a rye and a sweet type, you know, ebb and flow to it, I mean, if that was the goal, he nailed it, because that's exactly what it seems like to me. All right, last sip here. All right, so I'm glad I took a last sip there, because I feel like the more I sip this, the more rye dominant it's getting. So into more of the dill, the caraway, the rye bread, the rye seeds in there. All those flavors really being stronger than the sweet flavor. The sweet flavors are there to balance it out at the end, but I still think this is a rye drinker's rye. So I wouldn't think of this as a Kentucky straight rye, even though it is from Jim Beam. This borders along the line of a little bit of a different type of rye, more of a Pennsylvania style rye. So, all right, let me think about this and we'll go to the final breakdown. All right, final breakdown on Little Book Chapter 8, Path Not Taken. Price for this one, about 150 bucks. Sometimes you find it a little cheaper. SRP for these, when you do see them on resale, some people do upcharge these, but I never really see them going higher than about 200. Availability here is gonna be limited. It's not as available as Booker's, even though some people don't even see Booker's. I see Booker's a lot, but availability here on this, either way, is gonna be limited. Value for this one, I'm almost at even for this one, but given there's a 7-year, 3 5-years, a 4-year, there is an 18 and 11. There's an 18-year-old high rye bourbon in here and an 11-year-old Kentucky straight rye whiskey. So there is some good high age whiskeys in here, but given the fact that we don't know what those proportions are, I'll still give it a below average. Most I'd pay. I really like this bottle because I think it's different, it's unique, it kind of takes you on a nice ride, but I wouldn't overpay for it, so I'm staying with retail. Alternatives for this one, I don't really know where I would find an alternative for this. I think maybe Found North. They do a bunch of crazy stuff with rye whiskeys, although it's Canadian rye. Sagamore is using high rye and also low rye mash bills together. Maybe taking something like this and blending it at home might be your best bet. So taking something like a Hardin's Creek, a high age bourbon, and mixing it with an Overholt and a Knob Creek or other brands of rye whiskeys and trying to create something at your home. But this is pretty unique. And lastly, is this a skip? Is it a try before you buy, or is it a buy, or is it a buy and back it up? This is, all right. I'm gonna say this is a buy, but it's gonna have a little asterisk here. Asterisk. You have to be a fan of dill forward, rye, bready type rye whiskeys, because I think that's the dominant note here. Is there some sweetness? Absolutely. But I do think there's enough of those rye whiskeys, because I've spoken to a lot of people that hate that dill note. They can't take it in a rye whiskey. So I think that makes this a little bit polarizing. So when you put that into the equation, I don't think this is something I could say everyone's gonna love it. It's not like, oh, everybody go out and buy it. However, if you are a fan of a dill forward, caraway, rye bread, just those types of flavors in a rye whiskey, I feel like you will absolutely love this, because I do think it has enough sweetness on the back end of this to give it to make it interesting and give it some balance. However, it's hard to tame down all those rye whiskey notes that I was telling you about. So we'll see how this opens up. But like I said, if you are a fan of those types of rye whiskeys, if you're not a fan of that, however, you're just interested in Jim Beam products or just bourbon, you're more of a bourbon drinker, this is definitely more of a try before you buy. So I think overall, I really like this. I think it's very interesting. It's unique. However, that dill note does worry me, and we'll see how it opens up over time. All right, guys, well, hope you enjoyed this review for the new Little Book Chapter 8, Path Not Taken, here on the Master and Drum. If you enjoyed it, hit that subscribe below. Please hit the like button. And if you haven't yet, follow me on Instagram. Let me know what you think about this, what you think about the notes I was talking about. Does it seem enticing to you? Or is it still just, you know, is the price point more of an issue than the flavor profile? So always love hearing what you say. Thanks for the support. And as I always say, it's not about the whiskey, it's the people you share it with. Cheers. I'll see you next time right here on the Master and Drum. Cheers.